Welcome back to our study on the book of Romans. This is the Sonship Review Part 6, and this is session 17. And if you look at your notes down in the next to last paragraph on page 2, you'll see that the last thing that we covered is the first sentence in that paragraph where it says that bowels in the Bible are referring to the affections of our heart. That next sentence, when it says, when it comes to our spiritual bowels, that is the start of session 17. So if you want to mark that in your notes, because you're the first ones hearing this, there is no way to know where I was going to make this break. So there we are. And so I want to talk about the affections of our heart for a moment, because every one of us has naturally a table of likes and dislikes. And in this particular case, I'm not just talking about the kinds of foods you want to eat, or that kind, or where you like to go on vacation. We're actually now talking about the sonship education, the sonship curriculum. And we have a table of things that's in all of us. Can I just say it this way to you? As far as this particular area of our table of likes and dislikes, almost all of ours are the same, naturally. We just kind of are that way already. What your Father is doing is writing His table of likes and dislikes on our heart to replace that table we naturally have. And I'm going to tell you that I'd love to be able to say to us that the things that He wants to change that we don't really need change because we've already got it right. Because the truth is, we don't already have it right. And that's not because we're evil. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the things that we don't like are things that in every other area you shouldn't like. So it's natural. And I'm saying it that way. You'll understand more about why I'm saying it like that in just a little bit. But here's what I want to say. When you hear something in the curriculum, or you read something in the doctrine, and you don't like what you're hearing, and that makes you not want to participate in that, that is the beginning of being straightened in your own bowels. You will not see all of the major effects of that immediately, but you are going to have that process started. So it's important, I have to give this to you in pieces, it's important for you to understand that God understands that there's some things that when you hear it, it's not going to sit well with you. Now, right now, you may be thinking to yourself, what in the world could He say that wouldn't sit well with me? But I'm going to list some for you out of the Scripture, and when I do, you're going to go, oh, that's what he's talking about, and you're going to see how. And now, by the way, that's going to make you more patient with folks that are struggling with it. But look, if we contract this problem of being straightened in our own bowels, we're going to have to get it fixed, or it is going to end. Let me ask you a question. If your physical bowels are just kinked or blocked or twisted or shut off in some way, what will eventually happen to you? It'll kill you, won't it? Because you won't be able to intake food. Well, think of this spiritual malady the exact same way. This is going to cut you off, and at the end, it won't kill you physically, it will kill your sonship life. And that's how dangerous this is. So what you should do is think about this the same way you would think about that physical disease. If you went for a checkup and the doctor said, you know what, I see the start of a blockage in your bowels, you'd be going, hey, let's fix this now before it becomes a major issue. Well, I'm hoping you'll see this the same way, that if there's something in the curriculum that you're going to balk at, if there's something you look at and you go, I don't know if I want to do that, just think about what this is about to do as far as your sonship life is concerned. It's about to cut that off, and eventually it's going to get to where it just puts it to death. Now, Paul recognized that the Corinthians had this problem, and we read about that. But now let me give you this next thing. I think it's important for us all to see it. This spiritual ailment is caused by, the spiritual ailment caused two problems, and this being straightened in your own bowels. Here's the first problem. For the Corinthians, it began to affect their relationship with the Apostle Paul. Before, they thought the world of him and they wanted to hear what he had to say. But then it got to where this ailment made them now start second guessing if Paul was even telling them the truth. In fact, he told them some things and they looked at him and said, we don't believe God's doing that at all. And they began to reject. So naturally it affected their relationship with him. And secondly, it caused them to not participate in some critically important areas of their education and edification. And so, knowing that this happened with the Corinthians, I'm hoping what we'll be able to do is kind of take a lesson for them. In fact, that's why it's written in the Scriptures. And so, in order to do that, let me see. I've got another place that I want to take you here, and let me just look and see exactly where that is. The very things that will make you balk at the curriculum are the same kinds of things that will make you balk at some other things in your life. And you should balk at some of those. That's why it's the natural thing that happens to us. So what your Father is going to do is get you to think about some things differently so that they move from the dislike table to the like table. I know I need to say more about that. But your being straightened in your own bowels is really, because it is the affections of your heart, it is you have a table of things you like and things you dislike. And the things that are over here in almost every other area of your life, you look at and you go, I don't like that. And I would say, I'm right there with you. I don't like that either. But when it comes to the area of your sonship life, you can't allow these things now to keep you from participating in your sonship. Because if you do, you will become straightened in your own bowels. You will eventually quit and throw in the towel, and everything that you have been working for so far, it will be over. And there will be some consequences. We're going to list those consequences in just a bit as well. And so there were some things in the doctrine that Paul was giving to the Corinthians that they had a very natural dislike for. They didn't want to, it was undesirable to them, and they didn't like it. And I'm going to show you in just a moment a few of those things and what they are. The same reason that it was true for the Corinthians that they rejected what Paul was saying will be the exact same reasons that we will balk at the curriculum too. So as I go through this with the Corinthians, I want you to be able to see that this is applicable to us. So let me give you this thought in a nutshell, and then we'll move from there. When we encounter something in the doctrine that is so disagreeable to us that we refuse to do it, that is when we are being straightened in our own bowels. Let me give you a couple of examples of this. And you have a couple, but I'm going to give you more that are in your notes. Perhaps you do not like the idea that you must patiently endure the sufferings of this present time. That doesn't sound appealing. It doesn't say you can't, if you have a problem, you shouldn't try to fix it. But maybe you don't like that. And so you really, what's the thing that you're doing when you're, I'm trying to say this so that I'll make sure that we understand it. When you say, why in the world should I patiently endure the sufferings of this present time? What's going on with you is you don't value and esteem the work in your inner man as more valuable than the physical things of your body being alleviated. Now look, we do live in this body, and when we hurt, and we would like to get rid of that. And if we can, we should. But if you can't, if you're going through something, be it a physical pain or a mental trauma or whatever, anxiety, whatever that is, the patient endurance of that is something that your Father is working to produce in you. And that each time that happens, that is one more step in conforming you to the image of His Son. And that has to be more valuable to us than no longer getting a migraine or making my back pain go away or any of the other things. Look, if we understood how valuable and how eternal that was, we know, look, you already know this doctrine. God is not making any of us have these bad things happen to us. He's not orchestrating that. But He has given us something that will help us patiently endure it. And the doing of that is doing something eternal in us that when we get up there, we're going to realize that what we have been given is so much greater that if you were given the opportunity then, not now, where you can't think clearly, but when you get up there, if you were given the opportunity to say, I could make your body quit hurting, one day it's going to die, but you wouldn't have this, or through that, which I didn't put on you, but through that you can actually now do something that will conform you to the image of my Son, and you will have this for all eternity. Which one do you want? You won't even blink at that. You'll look back and you'll look at that like Paul did. This light affliction, and it wasn't light, in our eyes, but to him, this light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh a far more exceeding weight of glory. And if you don't think about it that way, all you'll be doing is looking at this, and this will cause you eventually to stop. And you'll say, I'm not going to engage in that. Well, maybe you don't like that. Or maybe you don't like the fact that God is not going to bless you in physical ways. I need God to give me money. I need God to give me health. I need God to give me... Look, I'm just giving you some examples here. Maybe it bothers you that God is not going to arrange your physical circumstances to intervene in the situations of your life. Maybe you don't like that. And so you don't want to participate in the doctrine of that. Maybe you don't like it because there's a doctrine that's going to tell you you're going to have to love some people that you don't necessarily want to love. And you go, and so we have all these, and look, here's what we'll always do. We'll find an excuse for not doing it. What I want to say is, and I say we, I'm not just talking to this group, I'm talking to everybody that's listening. Let's just be honest. I just don't want to do it. Just be honest. Well, there's some people that are not very lovable. Well, yeah, you'd be in that group. Because you know what? You were nothing but a sinner, and yet He loved you enough to send His Son. So stop it. Did you take the gift that His Son was offering you of eternal life when you were unworthy of it? Well, then stop thinking everybody else needs to measure up to you. That's a little hypocritical, isn't it? We're going to have to love each other. And listen, we're going to have to love each other desperately. It's not a Bible word, but that's an accurate description of it. We're really going to have to feel that way. And we're going to have to, this body is going to get knit together. That bothers some people. I don't want to be knit together with Eric. But you know what? You don't participate in the doctrine, you get straightened in your... I'm not threatening you to get closer with Eric but I'm just saying, if you... It suddenly occurred to me, it looked like I'm leveraging everybody there. But look, if there's some part of the doctrine that you say, I'm not doing this, I'm not engaging in this, then you are beginning to be straightened in your own bowels. And it is going to come to a head. It is going to fester. Just like the physical thing, it's going to get worse and worse with the passage of time and you know when you really find out you have a problem? Not when you first get it. It's after that thing has been going and going, and then finally it manifests itself in such a way that you can't ignore it anymore, and now you've got to go deal with it. Well, that's the way the spiritual thing works too, and I'm saying we need to cut this thing off in the very beginning and not allow it to get a foothold in us. Maybe you don't like the idea of casting off the works of darkness. This is legitimate. Now hear this. Maybe you don't like the idea of casting off the works of darkness, putting on the armor of light, because you don't cherish what the adversary may do to you. That is now do you understand what I'm saying when I say it's a natural thing? It's not, I don't want to participate in the doctrine because I just want to be a problem. I don't have any real reason. I just want to disagree with everything. That's not it. A son who has made the cry of Abba Father isn't looking for ways to disobey. What he's doing is he's looking at and he's saying, look, all the things the adversary might be able to do to me are things I'm not necessarily looking forward to. It's a natural feeling to do that. And so because of that, you may say, so I'm not going to cast off the works of darkness. Can I say it to you like this? You might kind of do halfway. I'll do all these other things, but if you're asking me, when the opportunity comes, and look, this is my understanding of this, and if I didn't think this was right, I wouldn't tell it to you. I don't think when you know what those three areas of the works of darkness are. I don't think God is asking us to go out and picket. I don't think He's asking us to march. If you want to go do that about something, that's your business. I don't think that's what God's asking us to do here. I don't think He's asking us to paint up signs and go out and name the works of darkness and carry sign placards about it and show everybody, where we are on that. But I do think He is saying that in the normal course of our life, when someone brings up one of these works of darkness, that we have a responsibility to repudiate those works of darkness, to demonstrate that we are not in favor of that and we do not want to be associated with that or affiliated with that, and then shine the light of the truth upon it to show it for what it really is. This is part of Satan's work that will bring the world to the place where they will totally reject God. And that's what they're designed to do. And if you say, and there's all kinds of reasons to not do that. Do I need to name any of them for you? Because I can tell you what they are. They're the same everywhere. People will say, well, look, how do I do that? And you don't have to do that like some mad, frothing preacher standing on a pulpit and waving his arms. You can just, look, when someone says that, you can just say, I'm against that. I'm against that because God is against that. That's the tool that Satan is using to bring this world to godlessness. I know you probably don't understand that, but I don't want any part of that. You can just say that. You can say it just like that. You can say, but that's not my personality. If you don't want to participate in it, just say it this way, I don't want to. Don't give God the excuses. Because really, all of this is part of your sonship training that is making you into the son that you're supposed to be. This is not to punish you. This is not sending you on an errand to embarrass you, although you may feel embarrassment. When you're around a whole group of people that are doing nothing but, well, let me take one of those. Let's suppose I'm in a whole group of people and they're going, I just think you ought to do away with the police department. They're just targeting innocent people all the time and I'm just against that. I just think we ought to do away with that. Well, you can do that, but you know what I understand? That's that second work of darkness, of attacking the institutions that give us law and order, that protect our society. I'm going to tell you now, if you did away with the police departments across the country, If you feel unsafe now, you have no idea what it would be like then. Because then people would rob you and kill you, and they wouldn't have a second thought about it. If you don't think that there are beasts loose in this world, as soon as the law goes away, I promise you they'll show up. And our lives would change drastically. But that wouldn't be what I would say. What I would say is, if a whole room, and if you say, and you ever notice how people are a lot like sheep? If the flock's going this way, they just kind of go that way. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I was going to say something else. But to be able to be in a whole group of that's all going, yeah, all right, and you go, look, that'd be a horrible mistake. That's part of what Satan is doing to bring this world to godlessness. You know what? We'd return to like it was in the days before the flood, where the earth was filled with violence. You know, you guys are taking some cases that may be legit, and now you're trying to do away with something that's important, you know, to have a civilized society. If you say that, and you say, and you know what, and I don't want to be identified with what you guys are doing. Well, is it possible for you to be made to feel embarrassed about that? Sure. Does anybody like to be embarrassed? No. But if that's the excuse, can you see explaining that to your Father? Gosh, you didn't cast off those works of darkness? Well, gosh, Lord, there was a bunch of them. It was a little embarrassing. See, I just don't think you have a full picture here. Well, what if they were talking about a member of your family and it was a whole room full of them? Yeah, we don't like that kid. You know what you'd be saying? I don't really care what you guys like. That's my daughter, that's my son, that's my mother, whatever. You know what? All y'all can go jump in a lake. I don't really care. You wouldn't have any problem with it then. Or at least you shouldn't. There's plenty of things that I hear I don't say anything about, but the works of darkness can't fall into that category. Because if I'm going to labor with my Father, by me doing that, I'm actually doing something in His operation against the adversary. All right, now look, I took a little time to talk about that, but let me just go to the next one. Maybe you don't like the idea that this curriculum is written, designed to be practiced in a body instead of an individual, because you don't really want to interact with a bunch of other people, and you don't want to cooperate with them, but you want to be the Lone Ranger and do everything on your own. And you don't like that, so you don't want to approach it that way. Look, unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that are trying their best to get this to work, and they are out there on their own, and they're trying to find ways to make this work. And I applaud them for that, and I want them to succeed in this. But if you're just one of those folks that you just see some part of the curriculum you don't like, and you just decided for whatever reason that you're fearful, or it makes you nervous, or you might be embarrassed, or it's just not the way you like it, or I don't want to love that person, and I don't want... If that's what's going on with you, then welcome to your new disease, being straightened in your own bowels. No, as soon as you start that, you won't feel the effects of it, but one day it will kill your sonship life. And I want you to know you'll trace it all the way back to one of these kinds of things where you first decided, I'm not doing that. Now that's how serious that is. If you were a doctor, if you were talking to a doctor and you had the start of a problem, wouldn't you want him to just tell you about it straight up? Instead of act like you're okay and just hope you get better? Well, here I am. And I'm just telling it to you straight up. So here we are with that. So any form of doctrine that you decide that you just don't like and you're not going to engage in, this is the result of it being straightened in your own bowels. Now, here's the next thing I want to show you. As we are conformed to the image of God's Son, we are possessing the bowels of Jesus Christ. And you know what that means? That means His table of likes and dislikes are now becoming ours. And can I tell you, well, that's one of the hard things about this, and I'm serious. Do you know why it is so hard sometimes to do this? Is because we don't want someone else telling us what we should like and what we shouldn't. We don't like that. And so what you're really doing here is you're saying, I'm going to take my table and I'm going to put it aside. And in order for me to be conformed to the image of God's Son, I'm going to take His table of likes and dislikes and I'm going to put it in that place. And I'm not just going to do it begrudgingly. I am going to do it with my full desire behind that. And that's really what's going on with that. Now, it could be that something is embarrassing us. It could be something that's making us fearful. And it could be, I didn't mention this a while ago, but it could be that doing this as sons and daughters may cost us something that is a higher price than we are willing to pay.
It takes us out of our comfort zone.
Oh, it takes us way out of our comfort zone. And it can change our life. We've talked about this before, and I'm not trying to bring this up so that this will always be in our mind, but look, in terms of worldly position or prestige, you will lose that. I'm not saying you may lose it. I'm telling you, you will lose it. In terms of worldly acceptance and worldly respect, you will lose that. The world will come to look at you differently. And in terms of worldly possessions and comforts, I can't tell you how much of that you may lose because it actually depends on your particular circumstance. But there is a real possibility that we could lose those things. In a moment, we're going to read something that the Apostle Paul said about his own situation with regard to this. And this is exactly the situation that the Corinthians found themselves in. Now look, there may be some other reasons that get you thinking about what I want to participate in and what I don't, but you can't start seeing the Sonship life as a cafeteria line that you go down and I'll take some of that, but no, I don't want any of that, and I'll just pick and choose. Everything that is being offered to you by your Father is necessary for you to really get to the place that He wants you to get. In order for you to labor with Him, in order for you to be conformed to the image of His Son, you're going to have these things, and it's important for us to do that. And so our table of likes and dislikes may get offended at some point. But that's the sign to us that we need to replace our table with His. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not mean to say God likes it because you're in an embarrassing situation. Or He likes it because you are put in a situation where you may pay a high price. I'm not saying He likes that. I'm saying what He likes is what you gain in the midst of those situations that far outweighs that fear and embarrassment and anxiety and loss. There's not anything that we have here that could ever be exchanged for what He's offering us here. So that is the thing to keep in our minds. Now, when we come back in this last one, I need to talk to us about the Corinthians. Because the Corinthians had really put themselves... What I need to do is I need to show you this process from the standpoint of the Corinthians so you can see what it is they did and how that affected them, and take a look at that whole process, because I think that will do the work in us that it's supposed to do.